All right. All right, are we ready to go? All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, August 8th, 2024 meeting of the school committee. We are here live at HCAM and we are being recorded. I would like to call the meeting to order and then invite those here in the studio to rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so there are three of us from the committee here live in the studio, and we will have two people, Chris Masters and Jamie Ronco, will be participating remotely, which means that any votes that we take here will be done by roll call. So want to start, are there any public comments? I don't see any recognitions that people have that they'd like to share.
Oh, I'll recognize the administrative team. We just spent 2 days in retreat, and I thought everyone was very invested, and I think we got a lot accomplished. So thank you to the admin team.
Okay, all right, then that brings us into reports, and we'll start with the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. So this is the superintendent's report for August 8th, 2024. Tonight, I will be talking about the Hopkins School construction very briefly. The administrators retreat, we have 3 administrators that we're replacing this summer, and I'll share with you just today's current enrollment numbers. So you can see what the Hopkins School parking area actually looks like. You can see that we have some pictures here where we are working on fire construction. On the next slide, you'll see that this is the back side of the Hopkins School. If I am geographically correct, this is where the basketball court used to be. And hopefully, they are now working 6 days a week to make sure that this will be open for us by August 23rd.
One of the biggest questions I get around town.
I'm sure it is, yes. And maybe I should elaborate on that and say, if there are parents who are having questions about what's going to happen on opening day, they really should refer those questions to Mr. Cotter. All right,
Dr.
we
Kavanaugh,
spent,
are we on
August
schedule?
6th and 7th, just this week, at the Connors Center in
I
Dover.
think
Oh, sorry.
there was a question.
Oh, sorry. Are we on schedule for that date?
We are so far.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
So we spent our 2 days in admin retreat, as I mentioned, August 6th and 7th at the Connors Center. And I just have a couple of photographs to share with you here. I think one of the things that we do that's really nice is when everyone comes in, you don't sit by school, you don't sit by position. Everyone is mixed up, and so there's a lot of people who are, just working in different groups as the time goes by. So you can see some of your administrator favorites out there. But as I said, there was, I think, a lot of hard work, and we got a lot accomplished. And I think that we are really gearing up now in August to open our schools to our 4,160 children. Here's a picture of the entire group of us out in front of the Connors Center. I think we're a good-looking group there. Managed to get that done in between rain showers.
Absolutely.
Here are our 3 new administrators. We have Rachel Ritchie. She will become our new Hopkins Assistant Principal. Sherry Kent, who is the Director of K-5 Literacy. And we have an Assistant Principal role to fill at Hopkinton Middle School. The former Pat Nash Middle School Assistant Principal has moved on to become a principal in Millis. All right, and this is just where we are in terms of enrollment. Interestingly, we had 4,128 students when we left in June, and today we have 4,129 students. And so you can see all of the students who have exited the district, and you can see all of the pending approvals, which means kids have been added to these grades. And so, as you would expect, for example, in grade 9, we had 20 students who exited. We had 14 enter. We had 3 who are pending approval, and so we have a net loss there of 3 kids. And grade 9 is always tricky because we have loads of kids who leave us and go to other schools, so that's typically the highest number on this list. Because it's August, we still have families who probably haven't registered their kids. They may have moved into town. So this is one of those times where this is pretty dynamic. You know, we're really not in a place where we could say, oh, look, it's an even number from year to year. And I remember last year when we were having conversations about the projected enrollment years out, and we were looking at our current enrollment, and there were people who were asking, will those 34 or those 39 or those 50 anticipated students come into the district? And by the time we got to the end of the school year, they had in fact done that. So we budgeted for an additional 34 this year. We are technically one student to the good on that. Last year, when we left, we had 109 students in the pre-K. Currently, we have 65, but because it's a special education program, as kids kind of age in, they will be being added, and we also have students who are typical peers who will be joining the pre-K. And really, that's all I have for you. We're really looking forward to the upcoming school year.
Thank you. Are there questions? Chris, I'm looking down at you. Any questions? Okay.
Could you repeat the number of students who are in the buildings now? 4,000?
Yes, K to 12, it's 4,129 who are enrolled today. That does not include the pre-K.
How many pre-K do we have enrolled at this point?
At this point, 65.
And that number I know goes up as kids
Super fast.
turn 3.
Yes,
Okay. Rose, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, that brings us into the school committee chair report. And just want to start by saying payroll warrants S25001 and S25002 have been approved. Warrants 24-082S, 24-083S, 24-084S, 24-085S, 24-086S, 24-087S, 24-088S, 24-089S, 24-090S, 24-091S, 25-001S, 25-002S, 25-003S, 24-004S, and 25-005S have been approved, and they are included in the folder. Do people have liaison reports? I know it's a little quieter in the summer.
I know that CPAC is gearing up for next year. Abby sent out a bunch of dates, so that's
Great.
good.
Okay,
And playgrounds are going full tilt.
that's great.
That's exciting. Met with the Sustainable Green Committee on Monday. They are very enthusiastic about a school committee role in that. They are interested in the curriculum that we have that touches upon environmental concerns. They know of 2 classes at the high school level, but they are interested in other curriculum that we might have that is dealing with that. Look at other notes. They're looking to get more students involved in the Sustainable Green Committee, if we have any suggestions for that. They're going to be working on composting. They have a meeting with Marathon, I guess, to start composting.
Oh, that's great.
Program there. And they're also looking at getting EV chargers at the, located at the schools. Some of the- That is it.
Charge or something that, how did they get paid for?
I believe it was through the town there, and they've got some money in some sort of grant program, was my understanding. They were not looking for money from us.
Great.
And last year during the, not this past May town meeting, but the town meeting prior, was part of that participatory budget. There was some money allocated for EV chargers,
Excellent.
although I don't think it's a sufficient amount of money to actually do the installation.
Do you know what they cost a piece?
Depends on, there's several different types
Like if it's a
charging.
Tesla, it's more expensive?
No, it's just a slower charge versus a quick charge, so they're different.
They're looking at putting 2 downtown first.
I had a question. That comes out of a school budget? The
No,
money for the EV? No, okay.
no.
Now, it was voted at town meeting as somewhat of a capital project. It was what they called the participatory capital request.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. That's it for everybody? Okay.
Oh, I
Then-
can add,
Oh, hi, Jamie.
sorry, hi. I can add one thing about environmental curriculum. So my kindergartners came home telling me about all the things that we do that can hurt polar bears and the ice caps. So I guarantee that they are talking about it in kindergarten.
I provided similar stories from my 2 children that have gone through the schools, but don't have any hard evidence.
And I suspect that a lot of this is stuff that's kind of ingrained, not necessarily called out as environmental, but part of what they're doing in the schools and teaching in different ways.
We actually, I just opened a box of textbooks for, I believe it was Marathon School this week. Not textbooks, but reading books. And the theme happened to be weather and weather changes. So you're exactly right, that it's embedded throughout the curriculum.
All right. That's great. All right, if there are no more, we'll invite you up. It's nice to see you, Ann.
Hi, nice to see you for my yearly trip about Nature's Classroom. Hi, Ann Ben Benick, the remaining assistant principal at the middle school. So I'm here to request final approval for the Nature's Classroom trip, which is our 6th grade annual trip. I don't know, we might be on year 30 on this trip. Wow. We are scheduled to take 350 6th graders. Because of the size of the group, we need to split them into 2 trips, Monday through Wednesday, Wednesday through Friday. And current cost is anticipated to be $405. We are just needing to confirm with the bus companies. There's a big football game somewhere in New England the weekend before Thanksgiving, which has caused us a second year of issues locating buses to bring us home. So we end up needing, I think we're currently scheduled for a bus company from Vermont to bring us home from New Hampshire. But that adds a little bit to the cost because it's a one-way trip and it's out of their way. So, but we had the same issue last year. So we were $405 last year, so we anticipate that that will be the same.
That's great. Are there any questions about either the Nature's Classroom program or the trip or anything related to that?
I just think it's a really, really
Yeah.
good thing.
It is, and my kids all went through, and a great opportunity for learning in the natural environment, obviously, but, and really hands-on stuff, but also it's a great bonding experience, I think, for those.
It's great on so many levels, and Nature's Classroom is a great program, and where we go, which is Camp Cody on Ossipee Lake, is really a beautiful setting and a well-maintained. Some of our other sites have gotten a little tired, so this is a great location to be that's well-maintained, and the director and the instructors are really top-notch. It's probably some of the best that I've experienced, and this is going on year 12, and I only missed 1 year for COVID, so.
And the COVID, there was one grade that wasn't able to do it, if I recall
So
correctly.
actually, there
And
was, no, we doubled up.
You doubled
So-
up,
My
but
son went late.
Right, there was a.
Year late, seventh
So
grade.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
we took grade 6 and grade 7.
But the kids that were in grade 8, I think, didn't
They
get to go
missed,
that
so-
year. But otherwise, grade
Missed
3.
one, but then we doubled, so, doubled.
So that was amazing.
Right.
All right, so we would seek a motion then to approve the grade 6 trip to Nature's Classroom in November of 2024.
I move to approve the grade 6 trip to Nature's Classroom in November 2024.
Okay, motion by Susan. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Second by Kyla. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Kyla.
I-
Susan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jamie?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you for coming out. It's nice to see you. Hope you had a nice summer so far.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Little bit left.
Yeah, we were just finishing some stuff up today, 11 days till we have teachers walk back in the door.
Wow.
11 school days, so.
Always
A lot to
flies.
do in those 11 days. But we're ready for it.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay, and that brings us into the Hopkinton Middle School paraprofessional request. Ms. Hanscom.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you. So I'm here this evening to request the addition of 2 paraprofessional level C staff people specifically for the middle school. I know you have a memo, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Or if you've heard any buzz with CPAC? If you guys-
No, I
okay.
haven't.
All right. I do not see.
I have a
any-
question.
Jenny, go ahead.
So we had, I think, a couple meetings ago discussed about changing a staffing to accommodate not being able to fill a para position, but provide support for students. But that was in the high school, correct? So we anticipate we'll be able to fill these 2 positions for the middle school?
That's correct. So that was a high school specific request, and this request is specific to the middle school. And the solution for the high school wouldn't be able to apply to the middle school need. That helps answer your question.
I think it does. I was like, we just talked about something similar, but we couldn't find a para to fill that role. So we're feeling confident we can find
Oh, yes.
good staff members
you.
to fill this role.
So I think that the ability to fill the positions, should they be funded, we would be able to accomplish that for a paraprofessional level C position.
Just circling back on that, the paraprofessional positions that Jamie's discussing were not C-level.
Not that I
Para-
recall. But also, the middle school's a different
Yep.
context than the high school as well. But I'm confident that were we able to fill, or were we able to have these positions, we would work very assiduously to fill them for the opening of the school year.
I had a question. These positions are outside of what the planned budget was. So this is in addition to what was already approved.
Correct.
Got it.
Susan, do you want to touch on that at all, on the funding of it?
I believe that we would be using the IDA grant to fund these positions.
Correct, and that's an appropriate use of those funds.
Correct.
And that would be not only an appropriate use, but an available use of those funds, which is what I'd like to see us
Yeah.
do so that it is able to respond to the student IEP compliance needs.
Thank you.
What is the IDA fund?
That would be the special education grant from the federal government under the IDEA law.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Disabilities in education.
All right. Any other questions? If not, is there somebody who would like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we approve the paraprofessionals 2.0 FTA, ABA paraprofessionals level C for the middle school.
Thank you. Motion by
Second.
Kyla, second by Susan. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Kyla.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
And Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you both.
Appreciate the committee's support very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's important.
Yep.
All right, so this brings us into the superintendent's 2024 to 2025 goals. And just for people who have not followed this every year, this is a process that we start right at this time of year every year. We discuss the goals and the indicators at length throughout the year and kind of culminates at the end of the year because they're used as the basis for Dr. Kavanaugh's evaluation. So,
All right, thank you. So we will do the goals and the indicators tonight, and as Mrs. Kavanaugh just said, we'll take a look at these tonight, and then we'll come back and revisit them when we're back together here in a couple of weeks, I think on the 22nd.
and I think you emailed them out to the committee as well. That's what
I
was looking
did, yes. So the committee actually has a electronic copy of both the goals and the indicators. So the first 2 goals are both student achievement goals. And you know that DESE divides them up into student achievement, district goals, and then also professional practice goals. So the first one says that over the past 3 years, the district has implemented considerable new curriculum and/or instructional models in both ELA and math at most grade levels. And so if you've been on the committee for a while, you know that I've had those kinds of goals in 2 separate goals. This year I've kind of combined them because I think that the work has gotten to a place where we're kind of just monitoring a little bit in math, and the ELA is, I think, also in a place where we're pretty sound, but I'll explain more about that. So this year, we are already seeing results of the curriculum and instructional shifts. They are manifest in increased test scores, so I think that the community will be interested to see what our MCAS tests are looking like this year, as MCAS scores. So going into the 24-25 school year, I will really be monitoring kids' growth and achievement, especially in mathematics. And then in grades 2 to 12, we're going to start an ELA analysis, and that may lead to additional programmatic or instructional or leveling changes. This is not dissimilar from the 18 months we spent looking at math. And you'll remember all the data we had compiled, and we made decisions about grade 6 placements. So you can see all the process benchmarks. I usually put them in there so that you know what I'm doing along the way. And then what happens is you'll have product benchmarks, and when we keep coming together to review these, more and more evidence will be added to those sort of windows, if you will. The second one is also a student achievement goal. The district will grow its capacity to support students' social, emotional, and behavioral wellness, and to validate students' identities. Work will take place at all levels, but primarily at the secondary levels, to achieve this goal. A couple of years ago, we started to think about the ways to kind of meld the social, emotional, cultural, and some of the behavioral things. And it was kind of an interesting thing, I think, because we had different people who were working to those ends. And so last year, I think we got to a very good spot where we could put all of those things under one umbrella. And so it's going to look like a lot of process benchmarks, but I think that's because we've successfully kind of moved them all into the same house, so to speak. So we will have data from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey. We have a survey known as PAGS, Pathways After Graduation, and so we survey our graduated seniors to see how we did as a K-12 school district. We are increasing our post-secondary trajectories, and we will also be establishing a MyCap program that was originally sponsored by DESE, and now we're bringing that into the high school. We will make sure that the Holistic Student Assessment, the HSA, is administered at least twice a year in grades 4 to 11, and that harvested data will be used to see how kids are accessing curriculum and faring in the aggregate, and then also at individual levels. The high school and middle school will develop cell phone use protocols. We will have the CRIOP, again, in every building, school improvement plan. We will be taking Black Prince recommendations and developing or selecting a tool to vet our curricula and instruction for biases. We will continue to train our faculty and staff in restorative practices through the work of our Director of English Language Acquisition, Equity, and Access, Jen Suker. Will commit to parent, family, and community outreach, enlisting the support of stakeholder groups in the district and school community. Jen does an awful lot of work with folks who are just coming into the district and who may need some kind of, I don't know if it's an orientation, a data exchange, language history, all of those things are covered in those meetings. Continue our work with the CPAC and the LPAC, work with the Director of Student Services to address disproportionality of our white students being over-identified with an SLD. And then I will once again start up my blog work and really think about putting out information to the community on social emotional learning and behavioral issues, and then also cultural proficiency. So now we can move into one of the first district improvement goals, to continue to address enrollment growth, ultimately building use and expansion throughout the district. It's going to be especially critical to make sure that the community is aware of our enrollment growth, our academic needs, our SEL needs, And the construction aspects of the work require a partnership with the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, Mrs. Rothermick, and the Director of Facilities, Mr. Person. The enrollment numbers and educational needs need to be articulated very frequently and with transparency in these meetings, and then also when we are with our town partners. And this has been carried forth. I think it's important to keep it here because we are nowhere near done with that work. And in addition to this work, you know that simultaneously we will also have our regular operating budget and capital budget to take a look at. My second district improvement goal, and my fourth goal overall. Last year, it was recommended that we begin a district climate team, and it was very surprising that the work became really validating. And I think that given the fact that this year we are going into negotiations to establish a successor agreement with the Hopkinton Teachers Association, it really feels important to keep that climate team work alive. Last year, we met, I think, 7 times. We conducted a 360-degree assessment that was completed by the admin team. We had climate surveys that went out to faculty, staff, parents, and students, and we had a lot of meetings with that district climate team itself and exchanged a lot of, I think, sort of kind of feeling data between the administration and the teachers and paraprofessionals as well. So that will continue this year, and I think Jeff and I both have goals to get into our buildings at least twice monthly. Teachers reported that they would love to see the central office administrators in regularly, and not just coming in to, see a kid performance or to visit with the principal, really getting into their classrooms, so. Working on students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs, as teachers report that student needs have increased over the years, so that was important to our teachers. Presenting the activities of the district climate team to this group periodically, and then meeting with the admin team regularly. And things like our admin council 2-day retreat, we spent a lot of time talking about things that would support kids academically, but also socially, emotionally, behaviorally, culturally, because those things are the things that often stand in the way to our kids accessing curriculum at high levels. And then the last of my goals is a professional practice goal, and this is something I've never done before in this role. But as the district leader, I've historically spent time in job-alike groups, but I've never taken on those kinds of leadership roles. And so this year, stretching my leadership capacity, I am going to be the chair of the Accept Collaborative Board of Directors. And I am also on the MASS Professional Development Committee. So in those capacities, I'll be kind of stretching myself and then continuing my work in job-alikes, of course. And hopefully that will make me just a better leader generally. And this year, we have a couple of things that will happen in district. I have to do the concussion subcommittee this year because the concussion protocols need to be updated. And then we also have to revise our district-wide crisis guide. So the work in district does fall, I think, in keeping with some of the leadership work happening outside of the district as well. And that's what I have for the goals. So I don't know if you want to stop there and take a moment before we move into the.
Do people have questions they want to ask at this point about the goals or comments they want to make?
I have a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Just out of curiosity, what does the climate team do?
Oh.
What's their role? Who's it comprised of?
Yes, when we first hired an SEL director, we came up with a definition for what is district climate. Really, how are the grown-ups and the kids really in our district kind of getting along? What are the morale levels? How are people feeling about coming to work every day? And I think it was an especially important thing to do after COVID. At one point during the pandemic, I think it might have been November or December in 2020, and people were pretty wiped out at that point in time. And we had done some work with surveys, and really people were kind of hanging on by a thread. And it feels like the last time we did a climate survey, which was just this past spring, it felt like people were in a better place, I think, emotionally. So it's really our goal to continue to kind of grow that, create like that fertile space for people to thrive as educators and as students and paraprofessionals and really everyone in our district.
Got it. Great, thanks. And this, the second one was on point 11. Work with the Director of Student Services to address disproportionality of white students being over-identified with an SLD. I guess what's an SLD and
Well, our Director of Student
that one
Services is
confused.
here, so we can call her right up to the microphone if you like. Before she sits down to
Great.
describe that, what I will tell you is this. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education measures all of sort of your ratios. And what they want to see is that, say, students of color have just as much access to really competitive, rigorous classes as their white counterparts, or they want to make sure that students who are on IEPs have access to that kind, or we don't have sort of discipline data that says that we are targeting boys and not girls in terms of consequences. So that's what the disproportionality report does. We have never been disproportionate until this past year, and Mrs. Hanscom is the person who's dealing with this, so fortuitously, she is here and she can describe it to you.
Yes, so I have
Great,
a
thanks.
great slide deck that I'd love to share with you. I can tell you all about it. We did do what we call disproportionality 101, maybe in April or May, I think, last spring. And the promise was that once we heard if our draft plan was approved from the Department of Ed, we'd come back probably September, October to the committee and do a follow-up. And I'm happy to share that we were notified after school ended that the plan was approved. So we can kind of come forward to the committee and keep you apprised, but also start working on it. And I think, Carol, if I remember, we got a compliment that our plan was very well put together. So we would begin in September working together with teachers, staff, and administrators on the specifics. And what for us it would be is looking at our referral process for students who have a specific learning disability, identified SLD in dyslexia, and disaggregating that data by race and looking at our outcomes.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Nan.
I just wanted to follow up on Chris's question on that. I think we just lost our Zoom. Oh, there they go, okay, no. So that in looking at the over-identification of our white students being over-identified with SLDs, are we also considering that it might not be that the white students are being over-identified, but students of color may be under-identified?
Correct. And so in our draft, we address kind of all possible explanation concepts. And I was pleased that the Department of Ed accepted all those proposed ways to look at this question. We weren't sure that they would, and they did. So we now have the latitude to look at that exact question, the inverse, which would essentially be our other subgroups of kids being underrepresented. And so we plan to do both at the same time, which was kind of where we left off with the committee. And we've received approval to proceed in that way, and that's wonderful. So I'm actually looking forward to that work.
How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's,
Thoughtfully, carefully, thinking about parent outreach and communication on sensitive subjects about the stigma around disability, and thinking together with parent representatives and a variety of constituent groups about how to do that in a way that would help people potentially come forward to the school district if they had a concern about their child's literacy development. And they were feeling worried, but they were worried about what would happen because they said they were worried, right? And so we're going to work together with some parents and a diverse group of stakeholders to figure out how people would like us to try to do that work.
You can't do mass checking that you've missed anybody, can you?
I think from what we've observed, this is very personal
Yeah.
to families and to parents. And so I think we're going to have to do a variety of approaches, maybe some very broad communication, but also some really personalized, culturally relevant and thoughtful communication.
And how does this compare to some of the data of children coming in from early intervention to our preschool program? I know they don't have specific learning disabilities at that age, but the has that demographic data seems
No,
similar.
I will, I think that's part of what we'll start to explore is there a pipeline that's getting interrupted or is
Right.
it not that? Yep, but we have the green light to get started.
Is part of that also some means by which stigma can be decreased?
Right, yes.
Because, you hear famous people who come out now and say, no wonder I didn't do well in school. I think of Whoopi Goldberg, who quit school, I think 10th grade maybe, and it turned out she was dyslexic. And she, after the fact, she learned how to deal with that. And that speaks poorly of our society, that we're afraid to have, that we see that as a stigma.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful, and I would say that I would see this as a multi-year communication project, really, and I think it's good work to be doing.
So the goal of this is to help identify kids that need additional services that aren't getting them.
Yes, and also to make sure that our eligibility practices and procedures are finding the students who genuinely are eligible, and we're not over-finding anybody or under-finding anybody. So it's like a
Got it.
two-pronged kind of process.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Yes, I think that what they're saying is that we are over-finding white students, but our question is that because we are under-finding other students?
Thank you.
Chris, did you have other questions? I think we all jumped onto your one on that, but I didn't know if you had other questions related to
No.
the goals.
No, those were the two. Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you.
We were lucky Abby was here.
Yeah. Jamie, did you have any questions? I just want to make sure because I can't see you.
I do. So I don't understand the difference between the district improvement plan and the superintendent goals. One thing that I noticed was the district climate survey shows up on the district improvement plan, which I think is really valuable and super important. But that's not part of the superintendent goals. And I wasn't sure if that would be something that should maybe be double dipped because it's so important as part of that, category 3 standard under superintendent evaluations. That way we can document multiple times how great it's going.
She's looking at the district improvement goals, I think. You're talking about like goal 3, for example, the district improvement goals. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and why it didn't show up in the superintendent goals. I wasn't sure why.
I'll
there
let
was a
Dr.
rationale
Kavanaugh answer, but this is separate from the district improvement plan, which is its own document.
Yes, so maybe this will be helpful. Every district has a district improvement plan, and that guides the work of the entire district. And then each one of the 5 building principals in Hopkinton will put together a school improvement plan. And so the middle school, for example, will have something on their school improvement plan that, high school may not, and that the elementary schools may not. But what is in those school improvement plans will all sort of live in some way under the guiding document of the district improvement plan. So when I do my goals and I have a district improvement goal, one of those goals of mine will address something in the district improvement plan, but it won't address everything in the district improvement plan. And so you did break up a little when you were asking your question, so I hope I'm answering it.
Sorry, the Wi-Fi isn't the best in New Hampshire.
Generally.
But I know this is only our first pass, so maybe I will spend more time looking at the documentation and bring it back when I'm in person.
We missed the first part of what you said there again because you froze.
Comes through. Since this is the first pass, maybe I will just try to clarify my question a little bit more and bring it back when we're in person.
So the other piece that I think can be confusing for people looking at these for the first time or even sometimes the 10th time is that you have to take different goals from different categories, including the student achievement goals, including the district improvement goals that you're your goals can't all be from a particular category. That DESE actually outlines the categories that the goals come from. I don't know if that helps a little bit, but I think I remember this, but I think Georgette sent out the document, the rubric about the goals and the indicators, and that might help comparing for people that against this.
Yes.
To look at how the two fold. It's a lot to digest, but that will help, I think, as we go along to.
Yes,
look
and
between
one of the
those.
things that DESE asks us to do with our goals is to then take the goal that is aligned to the district improvement plan and also show how it relates to the superintendent evaluation rubric that has a series of indicators.
Just in general, I think, and this is just for folks that are tuning in at home, the superintendent's evaluation and the superintendent's goals are much more scripted than I think people realize in terms of what is required of them and what pieces you have to pick out.
Yeah, and Jamie, if you have questions that you want to just forward to me, you can. And, then I can work on them and we can talk about them when we come together on the 22nd. That will sort of expedite the process so that we don't talk about it on the 22nd and then move 2 weeks out again.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so now we can take a look at the indicators, and these come, just so you also know, there's a more recent superintendent evaluation rubric, and those are the ones that don't break it all the way down into elements, and the committee a few years ago decided that we would use the one that doesn't break it all the way down into elements, so it will do standards and indicators, not elements. So my first one, the first three actually are all related to Standard 1, which is curriculum and instruction. So the first one is to empower administrators to ensure all instructional staff collaboratively plan, adapt as needed, and implement standard-based units comprised of well-structured lessons aligned to state standards and local curricula. Continually monitor and assess progress and provide additional support as needed, and models this practice for others. So on this one, I did not choose some of that support curriculum. On this one, I chose the kind of curriculum that is what we would call Tier 1, things that all of our students are getting. And so I broke it into 5 categories, I think, and these are all the things that Mr. Labrade is really working on. The first one is to think about what it's going to look like when we have a new 2 to 4 school and a new 5-6 school, because the curriculum in those buildings are going to need to be altered slightly to match to the changes in the physical plants. We also have to develop some civics curriculum, and so Mr. Labrade and many people are working on that K-3 and then in grades 4 and 5. We are very lucky that our middle school agreed to take the civics MCAS test a couple of years ago, because even though the data is in the aggregate, it's helpful to us to kind of see where we need to be if we are changing our middle school and high school civics programming. We just finished a science, technology, engineering audit of all of that curriculum, and the MCAS test is also going to be changing in grades 5, 8, and 10 in science, asking our kids to show how they do science, and they will be completing virtual performance tasks. So that's going to need to be upgraded, and then also computer science. So those are the curricular things that belong to sort of all students, and that's why I put it there, just in terms of kind of generalized curriculum. In 1B, instruction sets high expectations for the content and quality of instruction and empowers all administrators to do the same, such that instructional practices throughout the district are engaging, inclusive, and personalized to accommodate diverse learning needs of all students. Stays informed of new evidence-based instructional practices and provides resources to support to implement them as needed. So in this one, this is where I am looking at some of our kids who have, when disaggregated, have different needs. And typically, they are the kids who are scoring in the partially meeting expectations on the MCAS, or they are the kids that we would call in the yellow on our STAR assessments. And in the yellow kids tend to, when they take the MCAS, become the partially meeting kids. So we have unearthed a lot of data when we have been looking at special education scores. And we are seeing performance discrepancies for our students with disabilities. And so what we would like to do is to start having greater growth and achievement for our kids who are on IEPs. If we look at them historically, their scores are just very flat. Because we have access to SGP scores through STAR and through MCAS, it would be really nice to see our kids in the top 50th percent of all of the kids who are taking that test. And it would be lovely to see our kids making greater than a year's worth of growth. All right. When we were just together at our administrators retreat, we took a look at the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, and some of the levers available to us that might assist us in working with those struggling learners. And so we have things that are sort of our big six. And among those things are things like looking at how our people spend time in their PLCs, how we are using the progress monitoring data through STAR assessment, how we are implementing specially designed instruction in students where we have inclusion, how we are differentiating our instruction in those settings, if we have clearer supports for our LST teams, our learning supports teams, and how is it that we are, taking a student, analyzing what he needs, trying it, progress monitoring, and then coming back to the team. And then implementation of the CRIOP, pillars 1 and 4, and then continuing on with our SEL data.
What's a PLC?
Oh, a professional learning community.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And we are a district that, in terms of time, all of our teachers are afforded PLC time at the high school. It's a little trickier to do. They meet with what we call course partners. But in the middle school, 2 periods a week they are in PLCs, and at the elementaries, it's 1 period a week that they get to engage in PLC. So we're very fortunate that our teachers have that collaborative time, and it might be part of our secret sauce. All right, I embedded student learning in there because I don't think that you can be looking at 1B instruction without looking at the student learning outcomes. And student learning just says that we demonstrate an expected impact on student learning based on multiple measures of student learning growth and achievement, including progress on common assessments and statewide student growth measures where available. And we do look at our MCAS scores. I know there are lots of people who would say, why are you putting so much weight on the scores? And I don't think we're putting weight on the scores so much as we are using it as our report card. It lets us know how we're doing and what we need to do to bolster our instruction when working with kids. All right, so moving to Standard 2, 2D, laws, ethics, and policies. I keep this one on. I think it's really important to do that, to provide the resources and support for all school personnel to understand and comply with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, and ethical guidelines, modeling this practice for others. As you know, a lot of my work is to work with the school committee to ensure that our policies are sound, to guard the district against potential liability, to model ethical behavior, to work respectfully with our bargaining units. And this year, we will be bargaining with not only the Teachers Association, but the nurses, the custodians, and the cafeteria workers. So this is a big year, I think, for Standard 2D. And really, it is our hope that when we emerge from these negotiations, we leave with very fair, healthy contracts, that they respect the hard work of our valued employees, and that they are aligned to the fiscal reach of our community. So I will add in things as they go on, and you'll be able to see, when we have things like grievances, how we're managing them, when our labor management meetings are, and all that. All right, 2E, fiscal systems, leads the administrative team to develop a district budget aligned with the district's vision, mission, and goals that addresses the needs of all students, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district and school-level goals, seeks alternative funding sources as needed, proactively communicates the budget rationale to staff, community members, municipal stakeholders, and the school committee, providing regular updates on the implementation of the budget. Again, I think that this is going to be a tricky budget year. I know I said that last year. We were coming off the heels of a rough budget season previously. This year, it seems like this will be a challenging budget season because we just had 2 enormous capital projects be successfully passed at two different town meetings, and I know that the town is publicly, rightfully concerned about their capital debt. So we will have to keep that top of mind as we go through the budgeting process this year. And so it really becomes incumbent upon us as a school department to, as we're looking at our capital and operating budgets, to really ask for those things that we absolutely positively need to be able to ensure that our kids are learning and thriving in the Hopkinton Public Schools. Moving on to Standard 3B, student support, provides resources, professional development, and related supports that ensure the identification of each student's academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, including students with abilities and English learners. Empowers administrators to collaborate with families and effectively address student needs and prevent further challenges. Models this practice for others. So this one, I think, is just a little bit different from thinking about students who are academically needy in Standard 1, because this really covers the gamut. So we do know that we have our kids who are partially meeting and yellow, but we also know that we have kids, and this came about last year because I had a goal that, or one of the rubric indicators that talked about what is really the K-12 experience for our students and what's missing. And one of the things that we learned is that there's a lot of pressure, especially as kids approach high school, to think about that college trajectory. And so what does it mean for our kids if they are not interested in pursuing the college trajectory, if they want to go to Kiev, if they want to do something else after they graduate, if they want to go to the military, what kinds of options are there for them? Which is why the Senior Capstone Project is so important, the MyCap work that we're doing through a grant with DESE. All of those things are important to us, but just so much as like the dyslexia action plan for our kids who may not be reading at grade level. And so we've been working through that with DESE as well. So this is, I think, super all-encompassing. You can read through all of the things that are in there, but even differentiated instruction, co-teaching model, all of those pieces have to be there. And we will be looking again at the HSA data, the vocal data, Metro West Adolescent Health Survey data, the Pathways After Graduation data. All of that helps us to really get a clear picture of the needs of our kids. All right, and so moving to Standards 4, I think I have two under Standard 4. One is a commitment to high standards. Establish a district-wide commitment to high standards of teaching and learning with high expectations for achievement for all, including mission and core values, collaborates with educators and community members to develop, secure, and promote core values in an aligned mission, use them to guide decision-making. I think I've always been a very data-based and high standards kind of superintendent. And one of the things that we talked about when we were together yesterday is that, you know, I can remember doing some of the retreats, and we would spend time on leadership things or policy things, and the last couple of days have, at least to my thinking, been almost entirely student-focused. And I think when you see our school improvement plans, you're going to get that same feeling that kids are really at the center of that, and we are all committed to doing the best we can. Again, I'd love to talk about our MCAS outcomes for this year, because that work that we've been doing where we say there's nothing better for us than giving kids the absolute best curriculum and removing barriers to it, I think we're getting there. I mean, I think the numbers are starting to bear that out, and it's exciting. And I don't want you to think that it's the people in central office who are making that happen, or the building principals exclusively who are making that happen. It's every single person in this district. The SMLs, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, every single person, our tutors, our custodians, our cafeteria, everyone is making that happen for our kids. It's probably the most excited I've been about like looking at this data and teaching and learning for like maybe the entire time I've been here. And then just lastly, communications. One of the things that has happened over the last several years is we've been spending so much time on building projects and the elementary school building committee, and really tons of meetings about that and conveying that information to the community, that I think some of my other communication forms have fallen off. So I'd like to get back on a regular schedule, doing highlights from the Hill Show, getting my blog back in place, making sure that, you know, even back to school information for families, all of that needs to just keep coming out. And for a while that waned a little bit, or it got a little slimmer, and I'd like to fatten that up again. So those are the rubric indicators.
Are there questions on the rubric indicators? Jamie and Chris, I know you can't probably see that I'm looking down at you guys, but just want to check in with you since you're remote. If you have any questions or comments you want to jump in with.
I have none.
Okay.
I have a question.
I have questions, but I don't trust my connection.
Okay, so go
I
ahead
will
and start.
follow up with Dr. Kavanaugh, and we can look at them at the next meeting.
Sounds great, thank you.
Susan, did you?
I think I have an answer, but I noticed here doubling down on the message with the mantra, all really can mean all. I always thought it was all really does mean all.
Well, we started with all means all. And then in the next year, I think we were sort of ratcheting things up and really making sure that people knew that we meant that.
Oh, okay.
And so we went to all really can mean all. And this year, we're doing all means all, every student, every day. So we keep with the same mantra, but every year when we make some subtle changes or some not so subtle changes, we change the mantra ever so slightly. I'm glad you asked about that.
Yes, I did. Yes.
My only question would be, so I understand the focus on MCAS data as looking.
Sure.
But what other aspects are we really using to measure that? Because there are so many
Yes.
different indicators, things that I'm particularly interested in is student engagement, that you might get measures from observations and of teachers and.
Yes, we actually have some plans for walkthroughs and to do that kind of observation data. I think, too, that when you look at that vocal data through DESE, and when you look at the Holistic Student Survey data, the HSA data, you really get a feel for how kids are feeling about, instruction and engagement. DESE goes so far as to ask questions such as, I feel like there are times when I have student voice and choice, or I feel like there are times when I even get to drive the curriculum. And typically, school districts will get very low marks, and I get to drive the curriculum, because that doesn't often happen for kids. But I think our kids don't do badly in evaluating, or our teachers don't do badly when the kids say that they feel like they have some voice and choice. So those are our two other methods that we can use to do that. With reading things, we still BAS our kids, QRI our kids. There's a whole host of
Reading.
reading metrics for us. Metro West Adolescent Health Survey helps us to know how healthy they are, and that's typically their health, not necessarily their relationships with teachers or their relationship to coursework. The pathway stuff is super interesting. We just sat down with the researcher on that to look to see how we were faring with what our kids had to say about their experience and their readiness to succeed. But we also asked kids questions like, did you leave college in your first year? Why did you leave college in your first year? Are you planning to re-enroll somewhere else? Have you gone to work full-time? Anything, did you have health issues, mental health issues? So all of that is really covered in there. And you don't get an entire graduating class who responds, but I think we've got a full enough number that the data will be very meaningful.
All right, so we will bring this back on the 22nd. I appreciate the amount of work that goes into just creating this step of the way, so thank you for that. So the next item on our agenda is the school committee minutes to discuss regarding minutes preparation. And Jamie, I know that you had brought this forward as something you wanted to discuss, so I want to offer up if you want to frame the pieces that you're most interested in discussing on that.
Thank you. Let me know if my connection fails and it's not coming through. When I was reading through our minutes, I noticed that some of our, the earlier ones from mine and Chris's tenure lacked some level of detail that may be useful for us as we move through, especially our budget conversations. In that concern, I went and checked some comparable districts on their school committee meeting minutes. I looked at Weston, I looked at Lexington, I looked up some of Westboro's, and I looked back in our own minutes records from years ago. And I believe that Georgette actually increased the detail of the minutes that were before us tonight, which I really appreciate. I think that I'm just hoping to come to a consensus that a more robust level of detail would be beneficial for us as we move through, as the minutes are our official record. So tracking things like how we're managing the budget, how we're watching for cost efficiencies, having a record of that would be beneficial for us so that we can easily look back on it versus searching old videos.
Any, it's hard to hear because the volume's not that loud. I don't know, is it possible to increase the volume in the studio of, it's not an issue with your connection, but just the volume of it. I'm wondering if we could increase it in the studio. If Bob. All right, so can you just say something just so we can test the volume again?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's
Yes.
fabulous.
Yeah.
If you don't mind repeating that, I think not everybody heard what you said.
Sure, I'll give it another try. So I was concerned about the level of detail that was in our minutes from early in Chris and I's tenure. I think it's important that we document all the things that we as a school committee are doing to make sure we're controlling for cost, including questions asked of contractors, looking for ways to make sure that we're not overspending anything. And initially the minutes were fairly blank on our conversations and the detail that was being captured. I did bring that up. I believe the minutes before us tonight are of greater detail. I also compared our minutes with historically other Hopkinton School Committee minutes from years ago, which were much more detailed. I also pulled minutes from Westboro, Lexington, and Weston to compare their level of detail. And I think that what's before us tonight is a lot closer. I think having a robust record is beneficial to the entire committee and to the transparency to our community of the work that we're doing. Easier to look at than going through old videos. So having a good, robust record, I think supports the work that we're doing and our ability to support the Hopkinton school system.
Okay, thank you. That was actually super clear and nice and loud in the studio.
There's some AI platforms that will transcribe, and put in kind of recap form, any conversation or meeting. So I don't know if anyone, either on the committee or Dr. Kavanaugh uses that, but I was at a meeting yesterday out in Colorado where they use that technology. It's very effective and easy and low cost as well. So I don't know if that's something that's worth looking into.
Thank you for that. So I know we're not doing that currently, using AI in that way. I guess I have not compared the difference like side by side and looking at minutes that we had in the past versus what the ones we have right now are. I don't think we want a transcription. I think that's tedious to go through in terms of trying to find the information then, but I support the idea of additional detail to the minutes if that's what people. So Jamie, in terms of action, are you looking to make just sort of a general note of this, or what is the action?
Yeah, so generally agreement that we would like to strive for increased detail in our minutes, which I think Georgette is making that effort, which I really appreciate because we hadn't even gotten to speak about it at the meeting yet. And potentially as we approve minutes, looking to make sure that any important discussions that we engage in, particularly regarding our budget, are captured accurately, because I know that we are under great scrutiny to make sure that we're following fiscal appropriate measures. And we also don't want to drop any of our responsibilities to supporting the excellence of our school system. And the best way to be able to respond to concerns to that in our community is to have a robust record to point to.
I'd like to.
So if we're lacking any detail, we'd be able to add it, when we go to review the minutes.
Sure.
I would like to see some of the examples from other districts that demonstrate the kind of expansion you would like to see in the minutes. Is that possible?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to send minutes around. I was guessing at which districts are usually the ones Dr. Kavanaugh compares us to. I couldn't remember exactly. So even if I pulled Lexington, Weston, and Westboro, if there's another, or if those aren't the correct ones, please let me know. And I'll make sure to pull examples from the districts we usually compare to.
That would be
And
very,
I can send those around by email.
One other consideration, and I know it exists, I just haven't looked to kind of look side by side, but I know the town also has guidelines in terms of what they want to see, and I think those have been approved by the town attorney. That might be helpful to include in the discussion as well. Have you seen those, or do you want me to see if I can obtain a copy of that to circulate around as well for the next discussion?
I
on
can
this?
send them to you because the town manager
Okay.
sent them to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And did I capture the accurate communities that we usually compare to? I don't know if I trust my memory on that.
It sounded like a good representation. I mean,
Yeah, we usually
Compared to
throw out like,
Wellesley?
yeah,
There are a lot. We
there are
have
about 10 of them
10,
that we
yeah.
like to think of ourselves.
I don't think we have to look at all 10.
Okay.
But it sounds like Jamie found a representative list. Unless anybody has any offhand that you, if you're peeking at other people's minutes too.
I don't peek at minutes.
All right, thank you, Jamie, for that. All right, so we will circle back to this at a future meeting. So, that brings us into item E, which is policy ACAB, sexual and sex-based harassment and retaliation. Dr. Kavanaugh, and it sounds like the policy working group is
Alive and well.
alive and well.
Yes, so we met last week, and we looked at policy ACAB, sexual and sex-based harassment and retaliation, because in Massachusetts, the Title IX laws are changing, and so everyone needs to change their policies and their protocols. Mr. Labrat is working on changing the protocols, which is how operationally we work in the event that someone is accused of a sex-based crime, sexual harassment, sexual retaliation, whatever it might be. So on the school committee side, ACAB does in fact cover Title IX. So we looked at our former policy, ACAB, and our former policy, ACAB, was not that. Ours was called Hopkinton School Committee Policy Harassment, and it covered all kinds of harassment. So what we did was we went and we looked at the MASC ACAB policy, and we read through it very carefully, and we made some changes to it. So for example, one of the things that our attorney has shared with us in recent times is that when you look at, all of the protected groups, you also have to include pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions. So we added that terminology in there along with sexual orientation, gender identity, as examples of discrimination on the basis of sex. Then we added in the second paragraph, which is a definition of sexual harassment. You can read through all of that, and very long. We also had a long conversation about the ideas of a formal complaint, because there are times when someone might say to someone something about feeling, upset or, afraid, and that could fall under the heading of sexual harassment, and that does not have to be a formal complaint for us to be able to investigate it. So we worked on that. And then at the end, we spent quite a bit of time on the section where it says, while it's not possible to list all those additional circumstances that may constitute sexual harassment, the following are some examples of conduct which, if unwelcome, may constitute sexual harassment depending on the totality of the circumstances, including the severity of the of the conduct and its pervasiveness. And so we read through that, and we took these examples, I think maybe out of the Weston Public Schools, and put them in there and added in pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions and a couple of other things along the way. So what you see now, we think, is a solid policy around Title IX and sexual harassment. And even if you decide that you like this policy, we will send it off to our legal counsel to ensure that they agree that we haven't forgotten to dot any i's or cross any t's. And Susan and Jamie were both there as well, so I don't know if I missed anything that you would like to add.
All right. Susan or Jamie, anything?
I think we did a pretty good job on it. There was so much that needed to be considered and added in. It was, I mean, we did pretty good work.
All right, so in the other pieces, it will go out to the community as well before.
Yes, that's right.
So that will come back at a to-be-determined date
Yes.
after
I
legal's
mean,
had a chance to look at it, too.
We were wondering if you wanted to make sure that you were happy with it before we sent it to
Gotcha.
legal, only because if we send it to them and they approve it and then we change
Yes,
something,
I
we'll be
got it.
sending it back again. so.
Yep. It looks good to me. It looks like you guys put a lot of thought into it, and I always appreciate, I know that the policy group is a heavy lift, so appreciate that. Kyla and Chris, did you guys have anything you wanted to comment or add or question?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. All right, so since we are not taking action on that, we will see that again after our legal team has looked at it. All right, the next item on our agenda is this norms and protocols for the committee. And I'm going to ask Jamie, since you were thoughtful enough to take the document and redline it for us, if you would walk us through that.
Sure. I just got kicked off and back in, so I don't know that my connection is going to be consistent. But briefly, I did exactly what I spoke about when we had our daytime meeting. I tried to remove some of the things that I thought were either redundant or poor formatting. I tried to make it more concise, including making all the language consistent with referring to, instead of we, school committee members. I also abbreviated that to SCM. It does not mean sternocleidomastoid, which is how I usually see that. But it
mean
is
what?
defined in the beginning. Oh, a muscle.
Okay.
It took me a minute when I first wrote that. Like, I thought that looked strange, but then I realized it was referring to a muscle. And so things that we spoke about that I thought were clear without all the extra words to make it less likely to be, read and understood and agreed to in a clear way. I also removed the footnotes that seemed to add layers that were unnecessary, that were already captured in the document. And there had been, one thing that was removed from the MASC that I believe I put back in under the how we communicate, because I thought that made sense. But it's all there in the red lines where you can see exactly what I changed.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you for taking the time to go through to make the changes. Any questions, comments, thoughts about the document as it looks in front of us today? And for people at home who are interested in this red line copy is available in our packet. I actually think I prefer the school committee members written out, even though it's longer, because I think the SCM is going to throw in through the reading. I don't know how others feel. I don't have a strong
I
feeling on that.
agree
but-
with that, since it's a document, yeah.
And that's very easy to fix with just a find and replace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is it my understanding that on this, that you're removing the superintendent from the development of the agenda?
So the agenda is legally owned by the school committee, and even on the MESC, it doesn't refer to the superintendent owning it. Now, the school committee chair and vice chair may delegate it to the superintendent, but it is always the responsibility of the school committee to own the agenda. And so it didn't seem relevant to have that potential delegation written into the document when it is always going to fall under the responsibility of the school committee legally.
All right, let me scroll down. All right, I know I read this, but where did you pull that from?
I can't find it again.
Oh, it's in the footnotes.
Is there any,
I do think, as a matter of practice, that the agenda, legally, the agenda is the property of the school committee. Developing the agenda in practice is done as a collaborative effort.
That's what I
between-
thought.
Yep.
and I certainly think that you say it's down in the small fine print where I saw
It
that?
is,
The agenda is probably,
Yeah.
Yep.
developing the agenda is often delegated to the chair and vice chair. I think that should say personally, developing the agenda is a collaborative effort between the chair, vice chair, and superintendent.
I agree with that. I think it still keeps in the piece that the agenda is the property of the school committee.
Yes.
But highlights the collaborative approach.
Yes.
That we have used here in Hopkinton for the past couple of years. And it originally was the chair and the superintendent, and then as well as Georgette. I mean, she's
Yeah.
an important piece of the thing, too. We brought in the vice chair a couple years ago, maybe two years ago, because it allowed for the opportunity to have two school committee voices in there.
And to learn.
And to learn, yeah. So I think that's a nice thing to institutionalize there as well, that the vice chair is an equal participant in the development of it.
There really are times when operations need to sort of have a voice, I think, in the construction of the agenda. So a good example is that tonight, Mrs. Hanscom came and asked for two paraprofessionals, but she doesn't just go to Georgette with a memo and say, could you tell the school committee I want this? She has to go to Mrs. Rothermere and say, how will we fund this? She has to come to me and explain that, we need these because we have children who need two CPARs, and without them, we'll be out of compliance. And so I have to, think about like the legal ramifications for the district. So there are parts of it that I think operationally, we do contribute to.
No, I agree with that. That makes sense to have it written in as a collaborative effort between, and to specify that piece between the chair, vice chair, and superintendent. Now, were you thinking that should be are we adding to the footnotes or putting that into the document?
So, I mean, because a lot of the footnotes are taken out, it feels like maybe pulling the pieces that we think are important into the actual document might make more sense. Does that, what do other people think?
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know where you would put it, how we govern.
Where does it track to?
So I think that is how we govern, is that the agenda is the
Yeah, it's part
property
of
of the
the-
school. I think if we could take that piece out, I mean, not out, but take it out of the footnote and move it up.
Like make it the 7th item.
Yeah, make it the 7th item there. Do you want to reread, because you had nice wording on adding it was something to the effect of the agenda is developed collaboratively. How did you say it?
I wrote it down. She said
Oh,
the
fabulous.
developing the agenda is a collaborative effort between the chair, vice chair, and superintendent. And so to make that into number 7 under the first, how we govern.
Perfect. I like that.
Sounds good. And you can remove the footnote 4 under what we communicate.
I love removing footnotes.
Yeah, me too. Because I think really then we take, that takes all this print is very small.
Yeah, that
All
would
of
remove
that,
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's only
Except
the citation of the Mass General Law
Yeah.
that's down there still, which I think
That
is an
should be a
appropriate thing to
footnote.
leave.
yeah. But a short footnote as opposed to a novel of a footnote. All right, are there any other thoughts people have about this?
Where's the one that says about communicating with Dr. Kavanaugh?
So I took the language from the MASC, and because I think that the idea of well in advance of a meeting made sense, and it almost seems like the expectation of, when you'd get information, and that is almost more of a procedure. And this document feels more like a agreed upon policy. And so that's, those details are something that makes more sense to happen in a conversation versus putting in the document as far as the 2 days prior without expectation of an individual response. Like to me, that seemed almost too much to be in this document. I am just one person making that suggestion, though. Like, this is obviously our communal document. But that is under how we communicate number 2.
I'm good with that. Does that,
Yeah, I was going to
Captures
ask
the
if that
spirit
worked
of
for you,
it.
Dr. Kavanaugh.
It's fine with me. I mean, there are, most times, I'm able to get people the information that they need.
and
Every once in a while, it might pose a problem.
And I think that would be the one piece that as members, we would keep in mind, is that if we want to make sure that you are able to get the information in a timely way for the meeting itself, you may need a few days.
Yes.
And that the Tuesday timeline that we had previously had did help ensure that it's not but there are times when we don't have exactly the right thing.
Yes.
But if we strive to get it well in advance, I would think that's,
That's fine. It's easy.
as long as that, in that if we wait until Thursday at 9 a.m., you may not be able to get the information, because you may have to be looking at other staff members, or even some more complicated things might take multiple days.
And even when we had the Tuesday language, we would get some Thursday inquiries, and
Okay,
we were pretty good at satisfying them, so.
Well, and I think it's important to note that sometimes questions come organically out of the conversation we're having.
Yes.
And that, it's the expectation in terms of looking at open meeting law and the spirit of public meetings, is that we're not making up our minds in advance, that we're having the information here for discussion as much as we possibly can, and that it's important for us to ask so that we can get the information. And there may be times when, if we're not able to, we have to postpone things because we want to have as much information as we can. Some things can't be postponed, but there have been times when we've needed things that we had to come back to it.
I'd like to make a recommendation on number 3.
Yeah.
Under how we communicate. I know that it says that you wouldn't put anything on the agenda after it was posted unless it was determined by the school committee chair that it would be detrimental to delay the issue until a subsequent meeting. But MGL actually also adds that this has to be something that could not have been reasonably anticipated by the chair. So I think that language should go in there, only because sometimes we say, oh, we're going to add that because if we get it done now, that's great, and it might be detrimental if we wait, but
And the reality is that if we can't demonstrate that it would be detrimental to delay it, and not detrimental, but that it can't reasonably be
Yes.
anticipated, really
then
both
you'd be running
piece.
afoul of the law.
And Connor Deegan, our town clerk, would never approve it.
Yes.
He wouldn't allow us because if we could have anticipated it, but it's detrimental, he still wouldn't allow it.
Yes, that's right. So maybe that language should go in just to make sure we're covered.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Did you catch that, Jamie? Are you writing it down?
I did, I wrote it down.
You're super good at taking the notes and putting things down, and
I'm a very quick typist.
I have noticed that in person, yes. So appreciate that. Okay, are there other bullet points that people want to pull out for discussion? And/or do people feel, if you don't have things you want to pull out, do people feel confident and comfortable with the document to be able to move it forward
Yes.
as a vote? Okay. All right, last call. All right, Kyla, did you want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve this document, the norms and procedures document.
Thank you. Motion by Kyla, second by Susan. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Kyla.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jamie?
Yes, and that's as amended with
As
those two
amended.
things added, right? Yes.
Right. Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
Fabulous. So we have this, and this will go up, once we get it cleaned up, as we discussed, up on the website as well. All right, I believe that brings us down into items by consensus.
All right, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Fabulous. Are there any items that people wanted pulled out before we? Okay. Is there a motion
I move to approve the items by consensus.
Okay, motion by Susan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kyla. We'll start with you, Kyla.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, and that is approved. And then that brings us down into adjournment. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll
Motion by
second.
Susan, second by Kyla. We'll start with you, Kyla.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, and Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so we are adjourned at 8:28 PM. Thank you
job,
all,
only
and
3
have a
minutes
good night.
over.
I know we are really almost on the nose time-wise. Thank you all, and enjoy the little bit of summer we have left.